Okay, welcome to our webinar. As folks are joining, please share about yourself in the chat. Love to hear your name, pronouns, where you're joining from, so the city and or native lands you're joining from, as well as your organization. And we'll get started in a couple minutes, but glad so many folks are here and lots of familiar names. So we'll get started with names and introductions in the chat. And as we're doing that, I can even share my own names and introductions. I'm Jenna. My pronouns are she, her. Yeah, I'm joining from Pasadena, so Tongva land, and I'm closest to the Tongva village of Punitavatnya, and I work for Community Nature Connection. So glad you all are here. And thanks Heather and Jenny and Samantha for sharing in the chat so far, and Karina. Yeah, please keep on sharing the chat. Welcome Tani, another member of the Community Nature Connection team. And so as we're getting started, we are sharing introductions in the chat. Thank you all for being here. Ooh, and I like Kayla, Gemini, gotta have our star sign too, for important information. Right, so welcome again to everyone joining. As people are hopping in, we're sharing introductions in the chat. Hey, welcome. That's a lot of folks from Tongva land, from the LA area, but we have folks from around Southern California too. We saw Running Springs. And then potentially folks from around the state.
Woohoo! That's a Ewok there, Southern Pomo.
Love it. Another Jenna as well. Always nice to see another Jenna in different spaces. Great. And so we currently have 45 people here. So thank you all for being here. We'll take maybe another minute for introductions in the chat and then we'll get started. But welcome. So glad I just have such a great group here. And I feel like there's so much knowledge of just the folks who are in this space that there'll be really good future conversations and good questions that will be shared both today and in the future. Great. And yeah, at this point, we'll start, I guess, continue to put your introductions in the chat, but we will get started because we have a very short, but I think very powerful hour of time coming up. And again, welcome and continue to share those introductions in the chat. I'll put the prompt in again for us. And so to start is welcome to our webinar on cultural burns with Chairwoman Heidi Lucero of the Acjachemen Nation, and we'll have her full bio in a little bit. But first, just want to let you all know that hopefully you are in the right place at this webinar. And this is specifically one of Community Nature Connection's Continuing Connections programs for alumni and friends. So if you have never done anything with Community Nature Connection before, that's okay. But we specifically want to continue offering program for folks who have done programs with Community Nature Connection before, so that we can continue to learn and grow and engage with the outdoors in different ways. And so with that, just a little bit about Community Nature Connection. Our mission is to increase access to the outdoors for communities impacted by racial, socioeconomic, and disability injustices by eliminating existing barriers through advocacy, community-centered programming, and workforce development. And we definitely want to acknowledge that the land on which Community Nature Connection operates is the ancestral lands and home of the Tongva, Tataviam, and Chumash peoples, the original stewards and custodians of this territory. We recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. And one way that we strive to go beyond a land acknowledgement here at Community Nature Connection is that we create partnerships and collaborate with local tribes to expand equitable outdoor programming to all. And definitely encourage you all to learn more about the land that you're on using the great resource of native-land.ca. And we also invite you to consider what actions you can take to go beyond land acknowledgements. And in terms of what to expect for this webinar today, we will be sending out the recording of this event as well as any resources shared out via email. So if you have to hop off early, or if you have friends who you want to share this recording with, that will be available. And then in terms of timing for today, we are in the midst of introductions, and then Heidi will be sharing for about 40 minutes, and then we'll have about 10 minutes at the end for a Q&A session. And just to let you know that we have auto-generated closed captions available, and so you can probably find those on the bottom bar of your screen, and feel free to turn those off or on depending what your preferences are. And then we request that we use specifically the Q&A feature to share questions, or you can raise your virtual hand during the Q&A section at the end. And the Q&A feature is great compared to the chat, because with the Q&A feature, people can upvote questions or even comment on them, so we can know what are they interested in. And finally, just a request to be respectful in the chat and to make sure that this is a positive learning environment for everyone. And so without much further ado, I'm excited to introduce Heidi Lucero. And so to share a little bit more about her, is that Heidi Lucero, Acjachemen and Mutsun Ohlone, is a tribal chairwoman for the Juañeno Band of Mission Indians, Acjachemen Nation. She is an American Indian Studies lecturer at California State University, Long Beach, and a Native artist. Her passion is keeping Native culture alive and active in a changing world. Heidi's work revolves around the cultural sustainability of Native practices and traditions, such as basket weaving, Native food revitalization and sustainability, traditional tattooing, regalia making, Indigenous language revival, ceremony revival, and much more. Heidi has been a basket weaver and artist for over 20 years. The revitalization of traditional practices has brought her a greater connection with the environment and the traditional lands of her people. Heidi creates bridges between Native communities and institutions to help them get a better understanding of how institutions can better represent Native communities and how Native communities can be involved in that process. So with that, I will pass it over to you, Heidi. And let me stop sharing my screen. And we're excited to have you here with us. And so feel free to start sharing your screen. And we will have, you are already there. So go ahead, Heidi, and I guess you can turn on your video and I'll turn mine off so folks can see you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me turn my video on here. Okay, and thank you for that great introduction. I appreciate it. Miyuyam Notung Chairwoman Heidi Lucero Yakat known Ahashamayengoish P Mutsun Olonengoish known Alaunengoish Topamengoish P Goromengoish. Hello everyone. My name is Chairwoman Heidi Lucero. I am Acjachemen and Mutsun Ohlone, and I come from the villages of Alauna, Topam, and Goromo. And I'm a stubborn Capricorn, so just for the horoscope area. Let's see. So today we're going to be talking about cultural burn practices, or what some people call prescribed burns. And that's not necessarily our term, but we're going to be talking a little bit about that and what that means. But before we can really understand what cultural burning is, we need to understand the history of fire suppression, specifically here in California, because it has really affected us. So early colonizers saw Native fire regimens in California as very destructive and not restorative, as Native people know that they are. So the Spanish were the first California colonizers to prevent Indigenous people from burning the land. In 1850, the US government passed the Act for the Government and Protection of Indians, which outlawed intentional burning in California, even before it was a state. Fire suppression was mandated by the very first session of the California legislature in 1850 and was the institution of Weeks Act in 1911. Cultural uses of fire were essentially made illegal. And for many decades following, less and less burning occurred while more and more vegetation grew. And over a century of policies of fire suppression have created the conditions for the catastrophic high intensity wildfires we are seeing today in California. So this is a quote from a fire ecologist, Sasha Barrelman. We have 100 years of fire suppression that has led to this huge accumulation of fuel loads, just dead and down debris from trees and plant material in our forests and in our woodlands. As a result of that, our forests and woodlands are no longer healthy, and we're getting more catastrophic fire behavior than we would otherwise. And this is what is really important about the cultural burns is understanding this native landscape and helping heal it and make it a better environment for everyone. So colonialism fundamentally transformed the relationship between fire, the environment, and the indigenous people of California. Colonists in the late 1700s and early 1800s enacted regulations prohibiting indigenous cultural burning, like they prohibited lots of our practices. American settlers in the 1800s and 1900s enacted strict suppression policies that not only kept Native peoples from tending their lands, but made concerted efforts to take fire out of the ecosystem by extinguishing any wildfire by 10 a.m. the next day. The upshot of these fire suppression activities over more than a century has been the emergence of a radically transformed environment. Productive coastal prairies, once kept open by cultural burns, have been engulfed by shrublands and conifers, while formerly open coniferous forests have become dense, overcrowded masses with lower species diversity. So, what's the difference between a prescribed burn and a cultural burn? They may sound like they're the same thing, but there is a very distinct difference between the two. So, a prescribed burn is the controlled application of fire to the land to reduce wildfire hazards, clear down trees, control plant diseases, improve range homeland and wildfire habits, and restore natural ecosystems. Sometimes called a controlled burn or a prescribed burn, prescribed burning is one of the most important tools used to manage fire today. A catastrophic wildfire continues to be a growing concern in California. The use of prescribed burning to reduce hazardous fuels is projected to increase. Daily burn decisions are issued based on the forecast of air quality and the meteorological conditions that can affect smoke distribution or disbursement. So that is one of the big issues with having prescribed burns is the air quality. So we'll be talking about that a little bit more. So a cultural burns are a form of land management passed down by indigenous tribes over thousands of years. It's called cultural burning not only because of its spiritual and cultural importance to indigenous communities, but because the burns are designed to cultivate biodiversity and sustainable growth that makes landscapes more resilient. Indigenous cultural burns focus on what needs to be burned to revitalize the land with the intent of returning to make use of it again. So, not just to burn it so it's not useful, but to burn it so that we can go back and continue those practices that we've been practicing in those exact areas for thousands of years. Indigenous preparation of land for a burn can also involve coppicing, tending, promoting oak trees in place of pines, for example, and creating a new food source for animals and people alike. The ecology and spiritual importance of cultural burns is written into our creation stories, oral traditions, and traditional ecological knowledge. University of California Cooperative Extension Fire Advisor and Northern California Prescribed Fire Council Director Lenya and Quinn Davidson suggests we embrace this approach to fire. There is no there is so much to learn from cultural practices, not just about traditional traditions and techniques, but also about stewardship and connectedness, she said. Fire is a reflection of culture, and the kinds of fires we've been experiencing in California are a projection of our own disconnection and imbalance. It's time to reclaim the balance, rebuild the relationships. Cultural practitioners can help show us how. So, this is a few lines about cultural burning from Kat Anderson from Tending the Wild. She is one of my go-tos when I'm learning about anything about California Indigenous landscapes. And as a matter of fact, I make a lot of my students read parts of Kat Anderson's book because it is so important to know about the landscape and the Indigenous practices that were practiced here for thousands of years. So the historical and contemporary use of fire by Indigenous populations is a cornerstone of ecosystem management in California. Indigenous tribes have long recognized the significance of controlled burns, meticulously using fire to maintain and enhance various ecosystems. This technique, known as cultural burning, involves the deliberate setting of low intensity fires to cultivate desired ecological conditions. And we're going to go back and talk about this idea of low intensity and high intensity or catastrophic fires, because I think this is one of the misnomers about burns. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too. By selectively burning specific areas, Indigenous people encouraged the growth of certain plants that were not only integral to their diet and medicine, but also crucial for the health of the overall ecosystem. Fire helps to clear out dead underbrush, make way for new growth. This new growth, in turn, provides habitat for various animal species, supporting a rich tapestry of biodiversity. Another advantage of cultural burning is the reduction of potential catastrophic wildfires. While dry, dead vegetation accumulates over time without periodic burns to clear it out, the risk of out-of-control wildfires increases significantly. The Indigenous practice of setting smaller, controlled fires prevents the buildup of such hazardous fuel loads. This practice stands in stark contrast to the modern fire suppression policies, which often aim to extinguish all fires, leading to unnatural fuel accumulation and greater risk of large destructive blazes. Controlled burns aid in the regeneration of fire adaptive plant species. Species such as the oak trees in California rely on periodic fires to regenerate. The heat from the fire opens up seed cones and facilitates the dispersion of seeds, fostering a new generation of plants. Additionally, fire helps to manage invasive species that can outcompete native vegetation when left unchecked. So a lot of questions that I get when I talk about fire is, how are these prescribed burns or cultural burns regulated? So approximately 125,000 acres of wildland are treated each year in California using prescribed burning, and the rate of treatment is expected to rise as this tool is used more frequently to reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfires. So, due to climate change, drought, and other factors, today about 25% of the state's population, more than 11 million people, live in high fire risk areas, including what is known as the wildlands urban interface, or the area between urban communities and wildlands. And I know that here in Orange County, where I'm at, and in LA County, we have a lot of those interfaces. So these are the direct areas that we're going to be talking about. Um, the smoke management guidelines adopted by the California Air Resources Board establishes the fundamental framework for the program. And additionally, individual local air districts implement and enforce local rules and regulations. The smoke management guidelines also require burners to consider alternatives to burning in their planning, in planning their burn projects. Um, However, when alternatives to burning are not feasible due to excessive cost, technical inability, ecological needs, or the potential to cause adverse environmental impacts, burning may be the only option. And we see that in a lot of our areas. So the California Air Resources Board, or the CARB, um, so the state forestry policies calls for an increase in fuel reduction efforts, including the use of prescribed or cultural burns or cultural fires. This makes the California Air Resources Board's proactive oversight of smoke forecasting, monitoring, and management programs more important than ever for balancing air quality protection with fire protection and land management goals. So you need all three of these areas to work together to make sure that we can have useful burns that aren't disturbing the environment in other areas. So CARB supports the state forestry policy and efforts by land managers to implement agricultural and prescribed burns. CARB strives to identify as many burn days as possible, as evidenced by historical burn day decisions found um, on their website, which I provided. So it'll be put in the chat, and it'll be also sent to you guys in an email. Which in recent years has averaged about 90% of all days being permissive and marginal burn days statewide during the peak burn season. So this is great news that they're upping the amount of burn days that we can have. Local air quality districts provide final approval for each burn on the day it is scheduled to be conducted, and use CARB's burn day advisories as guides when deciding whether or not to approve a specific burn or burn plan. So air quality impacts of prescribed burns. So prescribed burns take place after careful planning and under controlled conditions. Controlling where the smoke will go is an important part of every prescribed burn. If not carefully managed, the smoke, a mixture of toxic particles, gas, can be a nuisance to residents, businesses, and it can adversely impact community health. I've also seen it where it completely blocks a road because the smoke is so heavy. So making sure we're aware of where it's going is a really important aspect. Smoke can contribute to the levels of pollution that exceed health protective air quality standards. This is one of the main requirements for a prescribed burn. And to minimize smoke impacts and protect public health, burns and air regulators work together to conduct burning under favorable atmospheric conditions. So these are some of the requirements. And these, mind you, these requirements really have to do with air quality and smoke, not necessarily some of the other important requirements that are required. So you have to take into consideration air quality, the meteorological conditions expected during the burn, including wind speed and direction at the surface and the direction aloft and atmospheric stability. So you wouldn't want to conduct a burn where in the morning when you're going to burn, the wind conditions are really low. But maybe around 12 o'clock when you're still in that burn process, making sure that all the burns are out, that the winds are going to kick up really high and then rekindle that fire. So you want to make sure that these systems are really um, in agreement with your burn plan. Types and amount of material to be burned. If you have material that will burn longer or that has a lot of volatile oils in it, you want to make sure that that they're aware of these types of materials. The location and timing of materials to be burned. You wouldn't want to be burning in an area where your fire season has already started, so you want to make sure of that. Location of smoke sensitive areas. You don't want it to be blowing into a community or a school or things like that. Um, and smoke from all burn activities, including burning in neighboring air districts or regions, which may affect the district or region. So if you're right on a border area where you're burning into another region where you didn't get a permit, you want to make sure that you're connecting with them to make sure that they're aware and that it's not going to disrupt any of their sensitive areas. Um, you also have to develop a smoke management plan and submit it. It has all the specifics. Each county has one, so you have to go by your county. And there are a lot of specifics that you would be working with your forestry or whoever is doing the plan with you. Um, so either forestry, Cal Fire, um, city fire, if you're burning in an agriculture area. So there are lots of specifics for that. And then you have to obtain a burn permit. Um, or burn authorization. So that's what the application is for. So the last sentence in this on this slide is what's really important to me. And it was one of the considerations that when we did our burn that we're going to talk about, I'm going to share with you about was kind of something new to me. So after the air district approves all the burn planning requirements, including the permit and the smoke management plan, the burner may begin making final preparations to carry out the burn. So this includes putting into place the resources needed to conduct the burn, notifying the public about the planning, the planned timing and the specifics of the burn, and obtaining a final air district authorization to burn. The burner may contact the air district up to 96 hours prior to the desired burn time to obtain a forecast of the meteorology and the air quality needed to safely conduct the burn. The burn will continue to work with the burner will continue to work with the air district and CARB until the day of the burn to update the forecast information. So air district authorization to conduct a prescribed burn is provided to the burner no more than 24 hours prior to the burn. So that means you can have a year or two of planning for a burn. You can fill out all the forms, you can get the authorization, you can get the permit, you can do all this, but you don't really know until 24 hours if you're actually going to be doing it. And that is still tentative. Um, you can get there that day and there can be a sudden shift in the wind. There can be a sudden shift in the humidity in the ground, the humidity in the air that will stop that whole project. It's very like minute to minute whether you're going to be able to have your burn. And that was something that was really interesting to me. So any of the previous information that I shared um, can be found at this link, and they're going to send you the link as well. You can also just Google prescribed burning in California, and it will take you to this link as well. Um, okay, so this image is an image of our Juncus Meadow, where we had a cultural burn. This is in the Cleveland National Forest, the Trabuco District. The tribe, the Juañeno Band of Mission Indians, Acjachemen Nation, has had an MOU with the Cleveland National Forest for, I want to say, over 20, probably 25 years, 20, 25 years. Um, I took over for my Aunt Marion Walking Stick, who originally developed the MOU with the Cleveland National Forest. And it was for protection and well, for protection of our Juncus Meadow, which is where we gather our basketry material. But it's not just basketry material. There's also a known cultural site there, and so we want to make sure that when we're doing things in this area, that um, that part of it, the meadow is protected. There are also several other aspects of this meadow that need to be protected in terms of burning. There is just adjacent to the meadow, there are two um, rock art sites that are really significant to our tribe. Um, there are some other plants in this area besides Juncus. There is the sumac or the Rus trilobata. There is an elderberry tree that for myself I've gathered there for many, many years. So I wanted to make sure that that was protected and copiced, but during this process. And then this road that runs through there goes from one side of the mountain to the other. It cuts right through a traditional gathering area, so we want to make sure that both sides of the gathering area will at some point get a burn. So these are things that we discussed with the firefighters and the Cleveland National Forest representatives when we went to do this cultural burn. Okay, so prior to the cultural burn, um, I have been going out to this Juncus Meadow for 20 years, gathering on both sides. And this is a picture from 2018. Some of you on here, I know there were a few people. This is Christina Gonzalez. She is a basket weaver, and she's Chumash, and but she lives up in the Central Valley. And she doesn't have a lot of access to Juncus, so she had come down, and I'd taken her out here to gather some material for a basket that she was working on. And as you can see, this is an elderberry tree. Surrounding the elderberry tree is a bunch of Juncus, and it's a specific kind of Juncus that is really important to Chumash. This is the Juncus balticus. It's a smaller Juncus than what we use to do our as your thread for coiled basketry. Chumash used the Juncus balticus as a 3-rod core for their baskets. But what I want you to notice is this elderberry tree. Christina is about 8 or 9 feet away from the base of that elderberry tree. There is a lot of broken limbs, a lot of limbs hanging down from this elderberry tree. It's not in very good shape. For us that gather this densely packed fuel material creates a really nice home for things like rattlesnakes that we don't want to run into while we're out gathering. There's also some other rodents that have built their nests around the bottom of it. And there's a lot of invasive species that are there that are encroaching on that area. One of them specifically, the mustard that has is choking out a lot of our native plants. So this was in September 2018, before we had our cultural burn. And here's a few others. Um, Behind Christina, you can see a car parked there, and that is the road going through. So the Juncus Meadow is pretty big, but you can see a lot of the sticks that have fallen from the elderberry tree, and a lot of the debris there. This is a kind of farther back look. This was the day before the cultural burn, March 23rd, 2023. You can see the elderberry. It's pretty hanging pretty low. The meadow has a lot of dried stalks of the mustard that have dried. Um, it's it's really hard to even see the juncus there because of the mustard. Um, so this was the day before. This is the other side of the meadow. You can see there's a lot of trash there as well. We did some trash pickup that day as well. Um, you can see kind of just not quite in the middle of the photo, but just a little bit to the right. You can see that there is some Rust trilobata. Um, okay, there's a hand up. Do we want to take a question? Let me see if I can.
Sure, yeah, we can give
Okay.
time for, although I wonder if that was an accident. But
Okay.
feel free
Yeah.
to put your hand back up if you have a question, but I think we're good to continue.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, here's a closer picture of the Rust trilobata. Anybody who is a basket weaver, I don't know how many basket weavers we have on here, but this is a really important plant, not just here in Southern California, but a lot of the Northern California, Central California tribes use this plant as well. We use it much differently down here. But this is a really old patch. There's several of them in our meadow. It doesn't look really good. It's really compact, which prevents long, straight sticks, which is what basket weavers want. And so we wanted specifically to have these patches burned. Um, and this plant has got a lot of volatile oils in it. It's related to poison oak. So a lot of people who have poison oak allergies, um, when plant is burned, they can have some respiratory distress. So and it's really hard to burn, as opposed to some of the things like the mustard that is already dried. This has got a lot of volatile oils, and they stay inside the stems of them. Okay. So the day before, this is still the day before, I met with the team that was working from the forestry um, and CAL FIRE to kind of make an assessment of what branches we wanted to cut from the elderberry, because it was really important to me that this didn't get like super burned. And so I came out with them. We went through and decided where we were going to cut and how we were going to do it to best preserve the tree and help it grow better after the burn. And now you can see that you underneath the juncus, you can see the juncus underneath it. And it's still pretty packed. They've removed most of the dead branches and put them in a pile, where they'll get burned the next day. But this is all part of the planning. It's not just going out and burning, it's preparing a plan, deciding what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. and what is best to preserve the land and help it regenerate itself and grow better. Okay, so the day of the burn. So this is March 24th, 2023. And as you can see, there is quite a few people standing out there. Behind the trucks, there's a whole bunch of firefighters. There are firefighters surrounding the entire area in which we're going to burn. There on this road, there are two fire trucks that are all hooked up to hoses, and making sure that things don't get out of control. What you don't see is behind those oaks there in the background is there's a road back there, and there was another three trucks parked back there to make sure, excuse me, make sure that this fire didn't get out of control. What you also don't see is on that road coming both directions, there are signs that alert people to the fact that there is a prescribed burn going on, not to call, 911 for a fire, that this is something that is going on and it's planned. And so not to panic, basically. So here are some more of the workers out here. They're lighting these areas on fire in a very methodical, controlled method. You can see the yellow hoses that are all around. Um, there are there was Cal Fire, forestry fire, and hot shots that came. Um, and this is one of the requirements, that there's enough manpower to surround the fire. One of the other requirements is enough engines to make sure that if the fire does get out of control or out of the controlled burn area, that there are enough engines to be able to put that fire out. For this particular burn, firefighters came from San Diego and from other districts to make sure that there was enough support for the fire that day. And you can see this fire is not something that is super out of control. They are small fires that are burning the surface. So when we talk about low intensity fires and high intensity fires, where a low intensity fire really burns the surface of the fire, of the ground, and doesn't get up into the canopy of a fire area. When we talk about high intensity fires, such as wildfires that are not intentionally set, they're burning all of this deep leaf litter and fuels that are underneath trees. And what happens, those fires are so hot and so intense that they reach up into the canopy and start burning the canopy. They also, instead of just burning on the surface, they begin burning down into the roots, where these plants, whether it's juncus or other plants that are growing, that they will not be able to regenerate themselves. So now we're moving upwards into the meadow. And you can see that it's very strategic how they're moving back further and further, and then making sure that what was originally started is out before they start new areas of the meadow. And these are some of the guys that have that are watching to make sure that it doesn't come out too far onto the street area. And this is right near the elderberry tree, which was one of my big concerns. Is I wanted to make sure that this didn't get up into the canopy, but I also wanted to make sure that the juncus surrounding the tree did get a good burn, because it was there was a lot of old growth, a lot of dead old growth that needed to be removed. And so one of the they call him the burn boss. So he's the one that is controlling. He's the leader for the day of the burn. So he he saw my concern, and he made sure that somebody was there to make sure that the fire wasn't getting up into the canopy of the elderberry. In the previous slides, he's burning, or he's hosing the trunk to make sure it doesn't get up. And then he is hosing up in towards the canopy to make sure it doesn't, a spark doesn't get up there and start a fire. Um, and I was really happy with, their attentiveness to our needs as a tribal community, the needs of the plants and trees that are there, and the whole production of the process from beginning to end. So yeah, here they are making sure that the fire is all out around there before they move on to another section. And here they are attempting to burn the sumac or the Rostra lobata, which, as I said, it's a little bit harder to burn. So here are some of them working in some of these other areas. And you'll see they leave a lot of the juncus, which is some long straight pieces. And what they're trying to get are some of those invasive plants that, like the mustard and some of the other ones that are there. So this is when they really, the sumac wasn't burning like I really wanted it to. I wanted it to burn down almost all the way. And so I asked them to, if they could intensify it to make sure it got that. And so they did, and they got it going, and they really did a good job of taking care of it. Here they are continuing to burn some of those areas to make sure that they were nice and low to the ground, so that the following year's production of the Rostra lobato or sumac would be really good for weavers. And here they are. It's completely down almost to the ground, and I was pretty happy with that. Here are some of those areas that have been burned. Some of them, like I said, were a little bit harder, but you can still see that it didn't burn. Like, there's still plants on the ground, there's still greenness that's there, and it wasn't out of control. This is out around the elderberry tree. You can still see is some of the juncus that wasn't tightly impacted around the elderberry, but you can see around the elderberry, it has been pretty much burned away until you look at it. So this is a close-up of right around the elderberry tree. Those little reddish brown sticks that are coming up, that is the juncus. So it really just burned the top of it off. It didn't burn all the way down to the roots or the rhizome of the juncus. So it will regenerate itself from there. This is the burn boss and one of the El Carrizo fire station firefighters. We were super thankful for them. They brought their whole team out that morning. Was it that? Yeah, it was that morning before the burn. We got to sit there and talk with them for about 15 or 20 minutes and let them know what we use these plants for. We brought examples of baskets with us. We talked about the importance of elderberry, in medicine and traditional um, instruments and tools. And so for them, it was a great learning experience about what was so important about, saving these plants and helping them regenerate. We also took them on a walk after the burn to the rock art site so that they could see, and we asked them that if anything happened, any uncontrolled wildfires occurred in that area, if they would make sure that they were took extra care to protect those areas as well. And they were very happy to do so. So 6 months after the burn, this is the meadow. You can see the elderberry tree is nice and beautiful. Things are starting to grow back. You can see the sumac. So the sumac is these kind of pinkish red sticks that are growing. They're growing nice and long. Um, they're not all crooked and kind of wonky, I guess. And you can see the new growth growing here. And 1 year after the burn, so this is the elderberry tree 1 year after the burn. This is I work with a group to give back not only to the forest, but to the community that also uses the Cleveland National Forest and the forestry, so they won't have such a hard job. We went out and we did the mustard abatement. So we were out there clearing all the mustard. I actually offered this to my students to come out for extra credit. So I had students that came out for extra credit to do cleanup with us. And here we are pulling mustard. Okay, so let's look at the, we have like 3 slides left. So let's look at the elderberry before, just so we can see a comparison. So this is in 2018 before the burn. This is the day before the burn when we were cutting it down. And this is 6 months after. Oh, so a year after. Sorry, that's a year after. Okay, well, I want to thank you all so much for being here, but I also want to thank all the parties that help participate in this cultural burn, because without building those amazing relationships with organizations like CAL FIRE, Hot Shots, Forestry, creating MOUs to make sure that these institutions are working with tribal communities. These types of events would not have such a cultural and spiritual significance to tribal communities. So thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. And definitely, yeah, it's so beautiful to see those photos and to hear the stories, and yeah, to hear that those relationships are so positive. Thank you so much for sharing. And so we do have a good amount of questions. And also while we're getting set up with the Q&A, I just want to put in the chat now our quick survey about, not the panel, about today's webinar. And so for folks, feel free to click the link and fill that out after. And you're also invited, if you're in the LA area, to join our Fire Resilience Planting Day this Saturday at Elyria Canyon Park. But with that, so many questions, where to start? So I think the first one that we see an upvote for is from Monica Matthews, who asks, what do you use to put down fire? Do you use fire sticks or drip torches or other items or materials?
So the firefighters were using drip torches. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. And we'll just, I can go quick through these. Rob was wondering, when you say sumac, do you mean laurel sumac?
No, so sumac is, we also call it basket bush. It's the Rus trilobata, and it is related to poison oak. And I specifically know how to identify it because it's got a very distinct fragrance to it. But it's one of those plants that is used widely in a lot of basketry.
Great, thank you. And if y'all are looking for a link about Rus trilobata, we have that in the answered section of the Q&A, and we'll make sure to share that out. And then Jessica is wondering, are approved burns only allowed to be carried out by the Forest Service / CAL FIRE, and potentially in community with tribal communities, depending on
Yeah,
the
I think
circumstance?
that is the best way to do it, because they are the ones that have all the resources, the fire resources, because you absolutely need to have enough manpower, whether it's forestry, CAL FIRE, and hot shots, to be able to protect the environment around your cultural burn. So they would be the best ones to work with.
Great. And Bob is wondering, what about animal habitats? Is there a part of the planning process that addresses wildlife in the burn area?
Um, there is, and I'm sad to say we had a little, not a squirrel, a gopher that was in our that got burned in our, during our burn. I think that once the burn starts, I think the animals tend to move away, um, unless you know that there's a specific, segment of the animal population that frequents that area. Um, I think that that would be something to address, with your burn boss or whoever is, helping you develop that plan about the habitat in the area. So when I think of that, I specifically think about, areas up north where you know that your animals have nesting areas, or they have their babies there, so you want to make sure that they're aware of those types of things before you actually have your burn. You want to bring that up during that planning phase.
Thank you. And we have Sandy wondering if you can please recommend cultural burn training or classes.
I don't know any. That was actually only my second cultural burn that I was involved in, and this one I was more hands-on, as the cultural resource director and the tribal chair. So, yeah, it was something that it was my first time being in that position, even though I've worked in that basket area for over 20 years.
Mhm. Definitely. Ooh, we have so many good questions, and I think time is going by quickly. Maybe my last question is: are there ways that we can stay in touch with you, Heidi, in terms of following your work, or if we have more questions, ways that we can get in touch if you're comfortable with that?
Absolutely. So I have social media. I am Tutu Lucero on TU Lucero on Instagram, and I'm Heidi Harper Lucero on Facebook. You can reach me at both of those.
Great. Thank you. Yes. And if folks have recommendations in terms of cultural burn training and classes, please, yeah, feel free to share those in the chat or share them with me in the follow-up email, and we can be able to share the resources and knowledge all together. Oh, yeah,
All right,
Climate Science
sending your friend
Alliance.
requests.
Perfect. Yeah, people are fast.
Yes.
And thank you, Jack, for uplifting. Climate Science Alliance has cultural burn training for free as well.
Oh, wonderful.
And
I'd like to take that.
perfect. And then we have, yeah, some resources from the chat. Rob recommends Forgotten Fires, another MCAT Anderson book that's worth checking out. And yeah, so some great resources that will come out via email to everyone. But just to officially wrap us up, I'll share my screen one last time. Is once again, thank you, Heidi, for just sharing your some of these amazing experiences and just for this incredible work in the Juncus Meadow at Cleveland National Forest. Again, please fill out our 5-minute survey about this panel and look out for an email with the recording and resources as well. And again, if you're local to the LA area, we'd love to see you this Saturday at our Fire Resilience Planting Day. But with that, we will start closing up. Feel free to keep on sharing in the chat if you have things to add. And thank you all so much for being here. And thank you again, Heidi, for your time and this beautiful stories and information you've shared with us. Great. And so many thank yous in the chat. And then, yeah, I see. Yeah, if you put questions in the chat for specifically Heidi or me, I'll follow up after. And I will stop recording now.